You're listening to another episode of Mr. Allard's Neighborhood. This is the place where you're entitled to Brad's opinion. And now for your host, Brad Allard.
All right, decided to get the calendar out because we got lots going on this month. Hope y'all saw the Facebook posting with all that. So how you doing, Taylor? You hanging in there today?
I'm hanging in there today. How about yourself?
It's fine. I had to get up early for the first time in a while because DBU spring break is over. It may be BISD and all the other schools around here may be taking a week off, but DBU is their week off is last week, and so I had to get up early and have, you get used to sleeping in a little bit, and then there you go. But anyway, so tell me, let's talk about Grace Bransom's debut. How did it go?
Yeah, we pre-recorded some episodes this past weekend, and she is a natural at it. I was just like, wow.
Oh, what's her? You showed me earlier just a minute ago. Her
So
logo.
it's
There
kind
is,
of
the
tied in
words
with her
used.
book, The Words He Used podcast, with Grace Bransom.
Well, for those of y'all who may or may not be aware what's going on, Thursday we had Gracie on the program, and we were talking about her book. Here she is, 18 years old, and she's written her first book, and we talked all about that, and also we're going. I kind of encouraged her a little bit. Hey, you ought to do a podcast. And then 48 hours later, she's doing it, right? So
it happened really fast.
It really did. I mean, well, that's because, we got local legends here to get it all set up. So we're good to go. So you think she's got some talent in this area, do you?
Oh, for sure. So her first episode drops today. It'll be on YouTube. And since it did happen so fast, hopefully the iTunes and Spotify will be linked up. It could be a little bit after today, but this week for sure.
It takes a little bit of time, but it's on YouTube right now. In fact, so I'm going to probably put this on my Facebook page as well, like I do my YouTubes now. I've had several people say they really like the YouTube format better than Facebook and all this other stuff. And they like it because they can do it at their time and whatnot. And so be looking for that, guys. The Words He Used by Grace Bransom. Also, by the way, if you want to meet this budding superstar, she's going to have 2 book signings this Saturday. She's going to have one from 9 to 11 at our place. Otto is very generous as always to let us use this facility, and then also from 1 to 3 on the Sky Bar at Texas Brewery up on that roof area. Most of y'all, I'm sure, are quite familiar with that place. And so from 9 to 11 at our place, 1 to 3 at Texas Brewery upstairs. And so you can go and check the book out. She'll sign it for you and all this other. It's $10. Okay. So, and bring cash, it'd be easier, but she has Cash Apps and Venmo and all this other business, but it's always good to have it just straight up cash. But anyway, so it's $10 and it makes really good gifts, to say the least. And I got a copy of it on Thursday, and my wife and I have been reading it, and it's just it's very impressive. So so that's what y'all could do. Drive by one of those 2 times, or both even. Who knows? That'd be lots of fun. All right. Anyway, back to our show. Let's talk about our sponsors, and then we're going to talk about today's topic. Thank you, Daniel, CrossFit Burleson, 317 Southwest Wilshire. Hit CrossFitBurleson.com. Hit the link, find out about the training programs, the membership plans, any specials going on, times, dates, et cetera, et cetera. So CrossFit Burleson's a pretty stout workout for those who really want to get into it. So at CrossFit Burleson at 317 Southwest Wilshire. Also, speaking of stout, certainly the real estate market's doing that. So the Stockzil Group and Shandy can help you get your foot in the door here in the Burleson area, turning transactions into relationships. She can help you with the homes, the viewings, etc., finding homes that fit your desires and needs. And also she can help you a little bit with the financing, since her husband Ronald's in that business. So you got that going on. Also, you're going to have the Rex Russell Wealth Group, myfinancialbox.com. He was very enthusiastic about Gracie's book. So, we were kind of texting about it, and he was very impressed about it. So Russell Wealth Group, myfinancialbox.com, hit the link, get the norm, find out what's going on. He can help you through retirement, 401ks. The market's going up and down, up and down. It's like, yo-yo. You want to have somebody that's experienced, understands what he's doing. So Russell Wealth Group can help you with that with myfinancialbox.com. Also, thank you to Optavia and Kimmy Etheridge at 817-789-1622. That's 817-789-1622. She can help you not only take the weight off, but keep it off. It's a pardon, it's a health lifestyle plan. It'll help you with your desired weights and how you want to how to get fit. Okay. Also, thank you to Gayla Moore's. Oh, Gayla Moore's over at Southern Gem, fine jewelry and gemstones. Hang on, I'm gonna have to cough for a moment. I'm gonna have to mute. There we go. It was just a little bit of a cough. It didn't sound good over the air. But anyway, fine jewelry and gemstones. You can find her on the top floor of the Windmiller Building over on Hidden Creek on the third floor. And she got repairs, she got design, she got cleaning, she got inventory, she got the whole 9 yards. So there you go. Oh, and my wife here's giving me a cough drop. It'll be hard to talk with a cough drop in my mouth, but I'll do the best I can. Thank you, dear. Anyway, and also thank you to Michelle and Free over at Hot Works over on John Jones, over by Kroger, and there's several other retail outlets over there and whatnot. So HotWorks is an infrared and spa system. You know, it's a means of working out differently than just throwing heavy weight. It's working out, yoga, things of that nature in a sauna infrared situation where it helps burn your calories without all the heavy lifting and whatnot. So HotWorks, Michelle and Free. Okay. Today we're talking about the political parties. I have been very, very upset, if you will, with what's been happening with our political parties over the last few years, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. That's why I say the party is over. Here's the thing that I teach in my government classes. First of all, political parties are designed to win elections. Okay, that's their main goal. Now, it doesn't mean they don't stand for anything or shouldn't stand for anything or anything else, but the main goal is that they want to win elections. Okay, and so they at one time were much more cognizant of what their base voters wanted from them. They were a lot more attentive to the needs of their base that supported their parties. They would seek them out, not just for votes, but for guidance on policy. What do you want from us as elected officials? I don't see that anymore. I don't see that anymore. I see both parties now basically held hostage by extreme elements in both parties, and that any deviation from adherence to those doctrines that are being put forth by those hostage takers basically gets you kicked out of the party and kicked out of any potential political career. I've said this many times. I'm well known for being a Republican, but there's no chance in the world I'd ever be nominated in this area because there are certain orthodoxies that I haven't really got on board with 100%, and one of those is the adherence to the Trumpism of Donald Trump. But I'm going to go over both parties and say that this is what's happening with the two parties. I'm going to start with the Democrats first and go to the Republicans second, because the Republicans are the ones I know better. I voted Republican all my life. I have voted for Democrat candidates before, but the problem is that these parties have moved away from what they originally stood for, and now they don't stand for anything. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to over the last few months, even they've just said, "I don't have a political party. I don't have a party." I don't have the Republicans no longer represent me. The Democrats no longer represent me. They the idea that I have to accept 100% of what the hostage takers are saying, both parties, to be a member in good standing is turning people away. The election, that was so intense in 2016 is one of the lowest participated elections we've had in about 3 decades. And the 2021 had much, much higher numbers, much higher numbers, which was interesting, because of the pandemic and all this other business. But my point is that that's very unlikely to be replicated because a lot of people are just so turned off by the parties. It used to be a fairly routine thing to be able to adhere more or less to one of the parties. The Democrat and Republican parties were not built like the European parties are, very narrowly tailored interests, or like many of our third parties here, which have a very distinct focus, and that's it. Most of the political parties in Europe, there's it's like which lane do you want to run in? Whereas both the Democrat and Republican Party here, being a two-party system, they had multiple lanes, and so it was possible to be a Republican or a Democrat without accepting every bit of the doctrine. Not anymore. Not anymore. The Democrats, the ones that I'll go first because that's why not. What's bothered me about the Democrat Party in the last few years is they've completely abandoned their focus they used to have on the working class, the farming class, the middle class, and they're so tied into ideology and so tied into what they call identity politics that they're leaving numerous Americans unspoken for. This identity politics is poison. Basically, if you're not familiar with what the term, how I'm using the term, is the idea that if you are of a certain ethnicity, race, color, etc., this is how you're going to vote, or if not, you're a traitor to your race, ethnicity, color, etc. That if you don't follow along with what you should be voting based on who you are, not what you think, but because of your status as a person of color or whatnot, then you are an apostate. And that's what's happening in the Democrat Party quite a bit is identity politics. And they've moved away from the idea that Dr. King talked about how many of people my generation were raised, the idea that we look at people by the content of their character and not by the color of their skin. Right now, with many of the Democrats, the color of the skin is all that matters. And a good example would be Biden's choice for the Supreme Court justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson. Now, the thing about this judicial pick, she has all the qualifications. All right, she has a Harvard background and all this other stuff. That's a show I'll do later. There's nothing inherently wrong with Biden's pick of Justice Brown, but what really bothers me is that what was the primary motivation for choosing Justice Brown, soon to be Justice Brown. It was to to basically check a box. Now, people who think, well, we need to have representation of all the races and whatever else, and that's fine, that's great. But for many in the Democratic Party, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter what the policies are. It doesn't matter what the people are. It's do they fulfill certain identity checklists? And you looked at every president says, I'm going to have a cabinet that's going to look like America. Well, when you get into that kind of checking off the boxes, it's not so much you're inherently going to have a weaker cabinet, a weaker organization. That may or may not be true, but it reduces the people that have been chosen not based on their qualities and their competencies and their education. It's because they are fill in the blank. That's what one of the real problems with identity politics is. It basically it reduces one's accomplishments to basically being somewhat a side issue. Are you fulfilling a certain category? Are you checking some box on a list? That's always been one of my problems with affirmative action is that it leads a suspicion of the credibility of the people involved, not by any fault of their own. Like I said, this Justice Brown is probably very qualified, but what's going to be said about her is she was chosen because she was a black woman. And so that's the problem with the Democrat Party is this is what they're about, is that we wanna check all these boxes. They wanna talk about being diverse. Well, if they really were interested in being diverse, they'd certainly would like to be better ideologically diverse, and they are not. There's no room in the Democrat Party for a pro-life person like there used to be, okay? The Democrats of my generation, a little bit older maybe, were pretty conservative. But there's no room for a conservative Democrat anymore. And I'll get to the Republicans because if you're thinking, well, the Republicans are just as bad, yes, they are in a different way. And I'll get to them probably after the commercial break. They're going to get their share too. But the Democrat Party has made it pretty clear they're not interested in ideological diversity. They are only interested in racial or ethnic or gender diversity. But they're all going to think alike. And if you don't think the way they do, you're going to be booted out of any kind of active role in the Democrat Party. And that's all there is to it. You look at somebody like Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin is a conservative Democrat. He's a Democrat of the old school, that pro-labor, pro-coal miners, of course, being from West Virginia. Basically moderate in the social aspect, pretty strong supporter of the Second Amendment and things of that nature. So he was a Democrat like Democrats were when I was a much younger person. And you look at what's happened to him now because he's not on board I'm sorry, Biden's $1 trillion train. He and Kirsten Sinema, also for that matter, are being castigated by their fellow party members as traitors and as the worst Democrats of all time, and as that and then they're beholden to special interests. I mean, there's nothing that they haven't said or done to Manchin. They hassle him, and he lives in a houseboat, by the way, in D.C. on the Potomac, and he gets hassled all the time there. And then we saw the clips of Kirsten Sinema just going to go into use the ladies' room, and she's being chased into there. This is what's happening. There is no room in the Democrat Party for ideological diversity anymore. And another thing is that when I mentioned this earlier, is that you talked about the Democrat Party as far left its roots as a party for the working classes, the farming classes, the agricultural classes, the what we used to call the middle class. They don't represent them anymore. They represent teacher unions, but that's not the same thing as working unions. The teacher unions so dominate the Democrat Party that the Democrat Party's policies on education are terrible. The Democrat Party is so beholden to the teachers unions that they can't do anything legitimate in the field of education. Certainly nothing beneficial. But that wasn't always the case. Now, the everybody looks at these parties, by the way, kind of a side note here, is like they're beholden to the big interest groups. Well, it's always somebody else's big interest group that's the nefarious actor in the situation, whereas my big interest group is doing God's work. So, if I'm a member of, say, the Steelworkers Union, I'm a member of a pretty powerful political organization, and I want that powerful political organization to represent me as a steelworker. That's a big interest that's legitimate. Whereas if some other interest, executive class interest or whatever is in get involved in politics, and that's a negative thing in our system and all this other rot. One of the things I teach in my government classes, some of y'all may remember this, is the idea of group action is how things operate at the local, national, and particularly at this, well, at the local and state level, and particularly at the national level. Group actions, people forming groups to try to achieve their interests, and my interests are just as valid as your interests, even if they directly conflict with each other. And my opinion that your interests are invalid are just as appropriate as you think that mine are invalid. The validity and the truth of the interest is not what's at stake here. It's does it represent my interests? And so if I'm a member of a group or a union or an ethnicity or whatever else, and I wanted that represented, then that's the democracy we have and the Democratic Republic we have, that's how people make those known. And to get back to my original point is the Democrat Party basically has tossed aside many of those interest groups that used to be the backbone of their support, like labor, like the middle class. And they're more focused on trying to get the vote out on a racial basis than they are on an economic basis. That is one reason among many why in this last election there was a significant and notable shift of Latino and Black middle class, working class voters to the Republican Party. And this month's issue of Texas Monthly, if you don't subscribe, I'd look it up anyway and get a free article. I think a couple free articles a month. It talks about how South Texas, which was the bluest part of the state, is now turning red because many of the Latinos, the Hispanic population down there, feel like the Democratic Party has left them. It's a very good article. There was a cover article on this about 6 months ago that the Latino population down in South Texas feel like the Democratic Party has abandoned them on border issues, on cartel protection issues, on environmental issues. Many of these Latinos work in the oil and gas industries, or they're border patrol agents, or they live in border towns and they see the problems associated with unlimited immigration, and they are turning to the Republican Party, and the Republican Party is going to do very well this next election with that area of the state, and it's going to be that is a seismic shift. Why? Because the Democratic Party basically has abandoned those people in favor of identity politics. They've abandoned those people in favor of more woke, if you will, or more liberal policies, more trendy policies and things of that nature, as opposed to seeing to the needs of their constituents. One of the most embattled, if you will, Democrats in Congress is Henry Cuellar, who represents that area. He's a Democrat. He's a conservative Democrat, and Democrats like AOC and several others are actively campaigning against Henry Cuellar. Cuellar is in a runoff with an AOC-backed Democrat down there. Her name is Ortiz, and they're going to the runoff in May. And so here you have members of the Democrat Party itself operating against Henry Cuellar and several others that are seen as not sufficiently on board with some of these left policies. Henry Cuellar is a conservative Democrat, and he is an example of what Democrats largely represented, particularly in the South and Southwest. And now he's in danger of being beaten by his own party. This is an example of this ruthlessness of ridding ourselves of anybody that is not ideologically on board. It used to be okay for a Democrat to say, "I'm not in favor of strict gun control because my constituents want to have guns." It used to be okay to say, be a Democrat and say, "I want strict border control because my constituents want strict border control," and the Democrat leadership would respect that. Now they don't. Now they campaign against you. And what you're getting is more and more and more divisive members of Congress. Ronald Reagan said it back in that 40-something years ago when he was going through primaries and they wanted him to slam some of his opponents in the primaries. And he says, "I don't speak ill of my fellow Republicans. That's the 11th commandment. Do not speak ill of your fellow Republicans." That both parties, that's right out the window. I'm going to get to the Republicans, I promise, in a minute. The other thing that's bothered me with the Democrat Party also is that many of the people that advocate some of these reforms are the ones going to be least affected by it. The upper middle class that talk about we want to go to a more green future, or they can afford a more green future. They can afford the Tesla, or sorry. By the way, Taylor, side note, is Tesla an expensive car? I use it as an example. Is it an expensive car?
I mean, it just depends on your definition of an expensive.
Yeah, well, is it more expensive than, say, a similar car that's gas powered?
It might be a little bit more expensive in the beginning, but you also have to calculate the cost over time because there's no oil changes, so you don't pay for gas. Electricity is, I mean, it's always fluctuating,
Right.
but it's way less expensive than gas.
Okay. Well, but the thing is, the initial investment in the Tesla is not somebody that of a middle income could just easily afford. It's not like your first car. It's something that upper middle class can afford. It's like eating organic. That always drives me nuts when I see organic is a whole nother issue. But when people advocate we need to eat organic, and they seem to think that everybody has the wherewithal to spend 20% more on broccoli or asparagus because it's organic. You look at these upper middle class whites. I think a lot of it is guilt is that drives them towards taking more liberal social positions because they live in gated communities in many cases. They have access to the police and much quicker than, say, South Dallas would. And the one of the least vocal groups. Well, I'm going to rephrase it. One of the least supportive groups of defunding the police is the African American communities in our area of the state. The black communities do not want to defund the police, yet you get some of these more woke whites in Highland Park to talk about, well, we need to defund the police and go about a different method and all this other stuff. And again, they talk about, or educational situations. They talk about, equality in education and all this other stuff, but they send their kids to private schools. Or they live in communities that are mostly white, and therefore they don't have the issues that, say, South Dallas high schools would. They don't put their own kids in that situation. It's okay to mandate that the kids down there go to this school, whether it's successful or not. But it's totally different when you talk about my kid because I have the wherewithal to pull them out of the system or move to another system that has less issues. But the idea of having school choice is, oh no, we can't have that. And so that's one of my problems with the upper white supported Democrat Party. Is that I think a lot of it is they talk about issues, but they support issues that in the long run they're not impacted by. When they talk about a green energy future, they're going to put a lot of roughnecks out of work, but they're going to have energy. They're going to have access to it, but they're going to put a lot of people out of work. And Hillary Clinton, in one of the few truthful things she ever said, she talked about in her campaign about 6 years ago, she's going to put a lot of coal miners out of work, and then they act like, well, that's a shame. And it's the same thing in many other cases. They talk about, um, you know, the they talk about these woke ideologies, but they're the ones they're not having to deal with it. They're protected. And so I'm not saying if you're up in white middle class, then you have to be Republican. Certainly not. But I think you should. I think what really bothers me is that they just seem to advocate policies that they themselves aren't going to be impacted by as much. And a lot of the impact of this Green New Deal, a lot of the impact of all these things, and I'm not saying the Green New Deal and green issues and green environmental issues aren't worthy. That's not it. But there's going to be tremendous economic costs, and they're going to be borne by the lower classes. Not everybody works from home. Nobody has this kind of setup like I do to do my job here. Or or at DBU, I could do it online like we're doing it here. A lot of people have to get in their truck and go to work. They don't have any other option. And so when they talk about these things, and they act like the costs that are associated with it are worth being borne, but they're going to be borne by somebody else. And I think that's probably one of my biggest problems, that the sacrifices that are being called for by some of these policies, by the Democrat policy, are not going to fall upon those who call for them the most. They're going to fall on the people that can afford it the least. And so, um, that's kind of where I stand with the Democrat Party. Now, again, I'm not a member, I'm not a supporter of the policies of the Democrat Party. I rarely vote Democrat. I do believe that the Democrats of the past were something that I could consider. I can't consider it now. I can't consider it now. There's no room for me there. They're too far to the left for me. I can't. To become an active Democrat, I'd have to basically jettison some pretty strongly held ideals, and that shouldn't be the case. And that wasn't the case 30 years ago. And I look at Bill Clinton, for example. In my opinion, Bill Clinton's pretty mixed, but whatever. Bill Clinton would never be elected today by the Democrat Party, never be nominated. He's too moderate for him. Bill Clinton was a fairly business-oriented Democrat. I mean, he had some social policies that stuck in my craw, but there you are. He's a Democrat. That's what it's about. No big deal. But he was a fairly business-oriented Democrat. He'd never make it today. Conversely, Ronald Reagan would never be nominated by the Republican Party today. And let's talk about the Republicans on the other side of these commercials. And what do you got here for me? Yeah, our place. All right, I'll be seeing you later this week. Otto, I hope you're doing well. He's always doing well. Otto is just the man with the plan. No problem about that. Otto is a very, very active community member, and he's going to be supporting Grace's initiative on the podcast. I'll probably mention that at the end. But our place is a wonderful restaurant and just a great environment. He really strives to make it hometown, and it really is hometown. So if you're looking for a good meal and a good place to go, you can't do better than in our town than our place. Thank you to Chris Wild. I keep doing that. Sorry, I read it and say Chris Notaboom. At Wild Cigar and Culture. Thank you, Chris Notaboom. Get the names right. Wild Cigar and Culture. They have a really, really nice humidor. If you're into cigar smoking or you know somebody that is, you need to go by and get a gift card if you don't know what type they smoke. But if you know what they smoke, they can get it if they don't already have it, and they have a bunch of different ones. So the likelihood of finding your type is pretty high there. I mean, it isn't just a handful of cigars. I mean, it's a big humidor, and it has all the different styles and shapes and tastes and whatever else. So check it out if you have a cigar smoker in your family. Go by and have a cigar, have a drink, have a good time. Also, thank you to Antonio. I see Antonio is listening. I hope he's still on board. At least he dropped by a few minutes ago. ProactivePaymentSolutions.com. Proactive Payment Solutions will get you the right point of sales operations. They'll get you the right rates, get you the right program, help you navigate it, help teach you how to do it, and all this other stuff. So if you have an operation, particularly an online operation that uses point of sales, or if you have a retail operation that uses point of sales, they can get you the right one. They have like, if you look on their webpage, you see like 20 different offerings to have to suit you the best and what your industry is the best and whatever else. So Practive Payment Solutions, check it out. Also Payne Beagles, Beagles Technology Solutions. It'll turn your home into a smart home. It'll integrate your whole system and you can put it on one app on your phone, from migrating your data to getting it to change the temperature in your house and whatnot. It's if you got the right utilities and the right appliances, you can turn your whole house into one smooth, organized operation. Also, he does aerial videography through his drones. And so, if you're a contractor, you're real estate, you're an insurance adjuster, something like that, check him out. www.beaglestech.com, 817-944-3572. 817-944-3572, and beaglestech.com will show you what he can do for you and whatnot. And so it's all a great thing. Also, Tiffany Griffin at Local Life TX. It's the localiftx.com is the webpage. The magazine came out last week. She was on the show earlier this month, and well, it was actually came out about 2 weeks ago. Yeah, I'm getting my dates mixed up. But anyway, it came out earlier this month, and it's really, really great. I mean, if you're advertising in this area, you want to be part of Local Life, absolutely. And she does really good work. She's extremely conscientious. It matters a lot to her, and so I'm very pleased to be associated with Local Life. Also, Live 365 Burleson Radio. I'm doing some revamping this week. I'm going to change the format quite a bit. I'm going to be dropping some certain types of music and adding other types of music. We're going to narrow the range a little bit. I mean, it's just I've that's some of the feedback I've gotten, but I'll save the details for later. But Live 365 Burleson Radio is on right now as you speak, playing hot music. So you want to take care of that. All right, let's talk about the Republicans, which is more, in some ways, more disappointing for me because, like I said, I've been a Republican all my life. When I say I've been a Republican all my life, I'm not particularly active in the party. I mean, the extent of my activity is usually voting. I don't do a lot of campaigning. I'll put signs in the yard, but I'm not the guy that gets on the phone or knocks on the doors or things like that. I've been to a few political rallies and such as that, mostly local stuff. But as far as the Republicans, it's been very, very disappointing. And the Republican Party that I grew up with is not what it is now. It's a grotesque distortion of what it used to be. And it's fairly easy to find out why. And it has to do with the person of Donald Trump. All right. I've been on the I've been known on the show to be very critical of Donald Trump. Now, I'm not going to say every policy he ever had was total trash. There were some policies that I wish that we could keep, and there's some that Biden is keeping. He's even going to court, by the way, to try to maintain certain Trump immigration policies. I find that incredibly ironic, but that's another story. But Donald Trump has so taken over the Republican Party that it really isn't the Republican Party. I'm watching the ads in February and early March for the Texas primaries, for the statewide races, and even the local races, for Congress and state rep. Not so much for the county races. I didn't see that, but I'm talking about the state and local races. And every one of the Republicans was endorsed by Donald Trump or had Donald Trump in there somewhere. I looked at like the Attorney General and George P. Bush and Louis Gohmert and Ken Paxton all were touting their Trump support. And then you looked at the governor's race, and you'd have Alan West and Don Huffines, and to some degree, Greg Abbott all talk about how Trump supported them. And what really bothered me about that is not just the person of Donald Trump and all the stuff that happened with him, but it's like you need my endorsement, not Brad Allard, podcast wizard, but me as a voter. Okay, my endorsement is what matters, and not Donald Trump's. And so rather than seeking out my opinion, and again, I'm separating myself from the podcaster. I'm talking about myself as a voter, and particularly one with Republican leanings. So I'm not talking about, getting a Mr. Allard's neighborhood endorsement. I don't know if Greg Abbott is walking, waking in the middle of the night and I'm worried about my endorsement. I'm just saying that they need to worry about representing me, and I didn't see any of that. And I get cards from Roger Williams, and he talks about how Trump thinks he's swell. It's like they're not even representing us as constituents anymore. They're representing the interests of Donald Trump. And you have a situation that if you were not sufficiently supportive of Donald Trump and all his impeachment carrying on January 6th, whatever else, that was being used against you. Now, I looked at one in particular, Van Taylor, who is that's an interesting story. He was, or will be soon, an ex-member of Congress that represents the McKinney, North Plano, East Hunt County type of area. And he had been there for about 2 terms, and then he runs in the Republican primary, and because he was one of the Republicans that did not vote to discredit or disallow the election, and he was one of those that basically said, "Well, I don't believe the election was stolen." He got heavily primaried, and then they were gonna go to a runoff. Taylor won enough votes to get into runoff, and then 2, 3 days later, scandal hit. He has resigned, and he's gonna be replaced by a guy named Keith Self, whom, may not mean anything to us here in the Burleson area, but he's gonna be your new member of Congress more than likely over in McKinney area. Anyway, the point I'm making is Van Taylor had to when he was doing his campaign commercials, he still brought in Donald Trump, and he still brought in his Marine service and all this other stuff, but he still brought in Donald Trump, even if he didn't have a formal endorsement. And all the Republicans in this state, the only thing that seemed to matter, it wasn't their policies, it wasn't their character, it wasn't their competencies, it was whether were on board the Donald Trump train, and was he on board theirs. Trump is all that mattered to them. Roger Williams didn't campaign in this area based on, "Here's what I wanna do for my constituents in District 25," or whatever the new district will be. He was saying, "I got the endorsement of Donald Trump, and that should be enough for you." And same thing happened with all these other statewide candidates. Gohmert and Paxton and Bush all talked about, "Oh, we wanna, close the border, and we wanna do this, and by the way," and then you'd have the voiceover, Donald Trump, "I endorse this guy." You see this happening in other states, where Donald Trump is finding people to run against Republicans rather in the primaries he felt like were insufficiently loyal, not to the Republicans, not to the Republic, but to him personally. A good example is the Georgia governor race. The Georgia governor and the Arizona governor race, you can put that in that category too. Neither one of those governors supported Trump's claims of fraudulent elections. So now they have backed primary opponents endorsed by Trump running against the governor of Georgia and the governor of Arizona, 2 Republicans that did not support the quote big lie, and therefore they now have to face primary challenges, which in many ways are much more difficult to deal with than the opposite party. Uh, and this has happened all over the country. You have Senate races now where sitting members of the Senate, incumbent members of the Senate, are facing primary challenges by Trump endorsed candidates. You're having a situation now where it isn't what my policy is on education. It isn't my policy on in the environment or the military or what's going on in Ukraine, or it's just, do I have the blessing of Pope Donald or not? And that's one reason why, among others, there's a long list of reasons, but that's one of the reasons why I could never run for office in this area, because they could take all the quotes I've been saying here on this show all this time and use them against me, and I would lose the primary. I get beaten out of sight in the primary. And so, my real problem with the Republican Party is they moved away from representing not just conservative moral values, social values, et cetera, and gun safety, protect the Second Amendment, and do business. They're very business oriented. What they're getting now is all that is by the boards. Is where do you stand on the election of 2000? What do you stand on January 6th? And what happened there? What do you think of the current investigation going on now? And you look at the Republicans that are participating and they're being censored by their own party. Just like Cinema was censored by her party for her not voting for Biden's plans. What you see is you're not seeing the candidate saying, "I support these things because you support these things." They're saying, "I support these things because that gets me Donald Trump's endorsement." That's why I am so irritated with the Republican Party. I don't want Roger Williams or anybody else come tell me what he's gonna do for me, because I know damn good and well what's gonna happen. He's gonna dance to whatever tune that Donald Trump is playing if he wants to keep his seat. Any Republican that deviates from the narrative that the election was stolen is putting their seat in jeopardy. Any Republican that puts, that goes counter to the idea that January 6th actually was just an expression of freedom and a legitimate political discourse, as the National Republican Party said about 2 months ago, when they censored, where I'm going with that is when they censored Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, who are 2 Republican members of Congress serving on that committee. They said that they were persecuting what was called legitimate political discourse. No, it is not. Shredding the Capitol building and crapping in it and looking for people to hang like they were talking about and banging on doors and threatening members' lives, that's not legitimate political discourse. But because calling anything else other than that would be a deviation from the story, that's what we're going to go with, by God. And I really resent it. I do. If you can't tell the resentment in my voice, I think it's fairly obvious. I resent it. I resent the fact that Donald Trump is coming to this Republican Party and so dominated it that I don't even recognize it anymore. Donald Trump was turned Republican about 8 years ago, literally, when he changed his party registration in New York. All prior to that, he was and nobody's idea of a Republican. But then he got his feelings hurt by Barack Obama, so he decided to run in 2016, and he gets on there and says a lot of things that we'd like to say to Nancy Pelosi to her face, or Chuck Schumer or Hillary Clinton, and all of a sudden he gets support, he gets elected, obviously, and it becomes like the things that a Republican voter would put a Republican in office for became unimportant. It became all about Donald Trump, and it still is. And that's why I resent what's going on with the party that I grew up supporting. I get upset when if I, on this platform or in my private conversations, say something critical of Donald Trump, well, you're just not a good Republican kind of thing, or you're just not a real American kind of thing. That's bullcorn. I I also get upset, and this is another thing, kind of not so much with Donald Trump, but I also get upset with the pro-life, pro-choice issue being used basically as a hostage. I am pro-life. I've made that very clear. But I don't want to be told every time I consider voting for the alternative, well, you just don't want to save babies, do you? That's a lie straight from hell. What they'll do, what's happening with it's happening on the other side as well. The abortion issue has so distorted our politics to the point where we can't have any other conversation. If you vote Democrats because you're pro-choice and there's no other deviation from that, and if you vote Republican, you're pro-life and there's no other deviation from that. And again, I'm pro-life, but I get tired of having it thrown in my face, saying, "Well, if I don't vote for these incompetents that have Trump's endorsement, I am dooming thousands of babies to their death." It shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that way. We should have better candidates. But the point is we don't. And to kind of put a cap on that, I'm reading more and more about the 2024 possible matchup, and the 2 biggest ones that are coming out of it is Trump and Biden again, or Trump and Clinton again. And I don't even know how to wrap my head around that. Trump has so dominated our politics that that's all anybody talks about really at the national level or at the state level. I look at some of the people they talk about being Republican contenders, and the criticisms they face is not, well, they don't like their education policy, they don't like their environmental policy. It's how close are they to Donald Trump? That's the only thing that matters. I look at the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis. They throw his name out there a lot. And Ron DeSantis may be a great candidate, or he may end up being a poor one. I don't know. All I know about him is he's on he is that he and Trump are kind of on the outs a little bit. That's what's being reported. And that basically Trump is trying to intervene in just about every election he can in 2022, and I know he's going to run again in 24, and it's just going to make this problem even more acute than it is already. But I want to finish up on the abortion issue. I can't say this enough. I am pro-life. I support the pro-life position. I support the pro-life organizations here in town. But you got to do something better about your candidates than saying I'm completely incompetent in every other regard, but I am pro-life. Therefore, I have to vote for you. Or you have to vote for me rather. That's what's happening. It's like anything else is off. It doesn't really matter. It just and it's saying and it works that way for the Democrats. I could be the worst candidate there is, but because I'm pro-choice, you need to vote for me, or the consequences are going to be dire. I want candidates. I want pro-life candidates, but I want to be able to vote for them for other reasons other than just that. Okay, I want them to be able to vote to have good education policies as well, or good an understanding of the border situation, or understanding of the tax situation, or they have a good understanding of the you know the police and security issues. I don't want some incompetent slob who basically is in every other way derelict and negligent on the issues, but because on that one issue we agree on, I am being guilted into voting for that person. I want candidates, and you do too, in both parties, that appeal to a broader range of issues than just one. I want candidates that appeal to not just where I stand on the pro-life, pro-choice issue, but also on all these other issues. And I'm just getting tired of having that one issue being used as emotional blackmail, and that's exactly what is happening. It's emotional blackmail, how the parties are using that issue. And I don't know if that's gonna change. I don't know if what would cause it to change. But I wanna end this up and say we need better candidates, and the only way we're gonna get better candidates, guys, is if we demand it through our votes and hold these people accountable once they're there. We need to have better candidates, and we need to have 2 parties that offer us more than just, "We're better than the other guys." I can't tell you how many people I know who said, "I voted for candidate X in the last election, or last 2 elections even, because he was better than candidate Y, or she was better than candidate Y." I can't tell you how many people voted in 2016 based on, "Well, I'd rather have Trump than Hillary," or vice versa. Or how many voters in 2020, same thing. It's either Joe or Donald, and basically that drove their decision that they didn't want the other guy more than they wanted their own. That's not the way this works. We need better candidates. Are we gonna get them? That's a topic maybe for another show. Now, tomorrow I'm gonna be unavailable, so I'm gonna do a show on Friday. This Thursday, I have Chaz Forster, the farmers market in studio, so we'll be talking with him and talking about the upcoming farmers market. And from what our conversation did, and also through some mutual friends, it's going to be bigger and better. And so I'm looking forward to that. But Friday is the next time we'll probably do a Zoom or restream, as we call it here, because I'm going to be unavailable tomorrow. But and maybe we'll revisit this. How do we get better candidates? Because in all my years as being a teacher, political science aficionado, podcast, or whatever you want to phrase it as, I never seen it this bad in terms of quality of candidates and the actions of candidates and their quality of what's going on. Now, I want to make this one distinction pretty closely. Most of the people that we're talking about, I'm talking about at the state and national level. The local people are different. The local people are different. I'd Andy Nolan on the show. I'd have him again if he needed to be, because he's a good man. And the local candidates are different because we know them. You know, we see them at church or at the grocery store or down the street or whatever else. And so they're accountable to us. Most of the people that serve in the county and city level are quality people. Why can't we have that at the state and national level? Is my question. I really like some of the people in the last few years that have run for office in this community or in this county. Why can't we have that same kind of quality at the national level? That's where I'm getting at. I'm sure I stepped on a few toes today, but there you are. Um, I kind of also ended this up yesterday. I put on the Facebook that on my page that yeah, I like to have political candidates on, and they don't have to be all Republicans, to be Democrats as well, as long as we all understand each other. That I'm going to ask them questions, not in a hostile or aggressive way, but I am going to ask them questions that we're going to want an answer for, not platitudes. That we're going to have to actually get the answer as opposed to just some kind of phrase or slogan. So I hope to have a few more on. I'm working on one candidate right now for mid-April. I'd rather not say who it is because I don't want to obligate this gentleman unfairly or whatnot. Or he may change his mind after hearing this. Who knows? But I think I speak for a lot of people, guys. Particularly if you're a candidate and you're listening to this, I speak for a lot of people and say these parties need to do better. They need to do better. They're not serving the people they claim to serve, and so they need to do better. And that's all I got to say about that. So, Taylor, let's run through the commercials. CrossFit Burleson, 317 Southwest Wilshire. I always appreciate your support, Daniel, one of the original sponsors. We've talked about some of these things before, and so you are, but CrossFitBurleson.com. Check out the page. Check it out, the plans, the programs, etc., and see find one that fits you. Also, Shandy, if you're looking to move in around this area, Shandy Stockstill is whom you need to talk to. She knows where the houses are, and she can help you with the rates. She can help you with the locations, all the information you need. She's extremely diligent. Also, you can check her 817life.com page out to find out what's going on in around this area. Thank you, Rex, with the Russell Wealth Group, myfinancialbox.com. Hit the link. See what he has to say about what's going on in the financial world, whatnot. You get to know him, have some coffee with him, become a client. You'll be glad you did. He's very, very capable and exceptionally capable is a better way to put it. Thank you, Kimmy, over at Optavia, 817-789-1622. If you're looking to lose weight or you're looking to maintain weight, she's the person to talk to. She's very, very attentive, good God-fearing woman. 817-789-1622. So she can help you with whatever health and weight related issues you have through Optavia. Another God-fearing woman, Gayla Moores, over at Southern Gem, Fine Jewelry and Gemstones. We thank you for your support. Also, we hope you're doing well. She's got the inventory. She's got the full service jewelers. She also will tell you, she told us at the last meeting, because of the war in Ukraine, the diamond supply from Russia has been withheld, so to speak. It's part of the banned list. And Russia is the second largest exporter of diamonds. So if you're looking to buy, you better thinking real quickly. Okay. But she is not only just a retailer. She also does, like I said, design, repairs, cleanings, all the above. Also, another God-fearing woman, Michelle Humphrey. I appreciate your support at HotWorks. The infrared sauna, the yoga, the workouts, the Peloton, the whole thing, work the bike. You could do all those things in her facility and an infrared system. And a lot of the people in our networking group at BNI just swear by it. They think it's just wonderful. And I've had several audience or guest members, rather, that's a good way to put it, several guest members that when I do these ads for Michelle, say, oh, I do that. And I'm a member there and it's great. And they describe it in glowing terms. So they are HotWorks. Also, Otto, Our Place Restaurant, the place to be. Get breakfast, get lunch, get entertained by Otto as, he goes through, all he likes is the tuxedo. And, he really is like the maitre d' of Burleson. So there you are at Our Place Restaurant on the highway in Ellsbury since 1986. Also, thank you to Wild Cigar and Culture over at the Standard on Hidden Creek, right next to Doughboy Donuts, and you can get yourself a decent cigar, a decent drink, have a good conversation. You won't be blasted out by the racket and not a lot of kids or whatever else. So, Wild Cigar and Culture, a good place to hang out. Also, thank you to Antonio Bassano, Proactive Payment Solutions, help you with your point of sales operations, get you the best rates and the best systems. So check proactivepaymentsolution.com and Antonio will get you set up. Thank you to Payne over at Payne Beagles Technology Solutions. It's beaglestech.com or 817-944-3572. And he'll help you make your home a smart home and also help you with your aerial videography, help you with your migration of your data from one system to another. So he can help do it all. Also, Tiffany, hope you're doing well. Local Life Magazine. I just really endorse this product very highly. It's a good way to get your product out in front of a lot of people, over 30,000 homes, over 110,000 people in the North Johnson County area. And then Live 365, Burleson Radio. Like I said, this week in my free time, if I have much, I'm going to be revamping it. So there you go. Check it out. All right, Taylor. I guess I'll see you in the studio on Thursday.
Sounds like a plan.
It sounds like a plan. All right, and y'all take care. This is on YouTube, so if you want to check this out again or share it, whatnot, I'd appreciate it. So y'all take care.